Thanks for tuning in. Today we'll be making jachtschotel, a Dutch casserole dish that has been around for hundreds of years. Hi, I'm Tuan and welcome to my kitchen. If you're new to this channel, I focus on cooking foods from my home country, the Netherlands, and some of its former colonies such as Indonesia. Jachtschotel loosely translates to hunter's casserole, and originally it was made from the tough cuts of meat of whatever game they'd been hunting for that day. Now in modern times it is made with either ground beef, brisket or short ribs, and that's what I'll be using today. There are two main components, mashed potatoes and beef stew, which is what we're going to start with. For this you will need 500 milliliters of beef stock. I'm using the same stock I made for snert. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. 2 onions, 2 carrots, 2 stalks of celery, 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard, 2 slices of ginger, 2 cloves, 2 bay leaves, 1 kilogram of beef. I'm using short ribs, but you can use brisket as well. Some flour that we're going to coat the beef in before browning, 2 tablespoons of white wine vinegar, 25 grams of butter, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and some salt and pepper to taste. To make the mashed potatoes, you will need 1 kilo of potatoes. Use whichever ones you use for making mashed potatoes. I'm using russet potatoes, 100 grams of butter, some nutmeg, and salt and pepper to taste. Lastly, you will also need 3 tart apples. I'm using Granny Smith, but you can use any tart apple you like, some breadcrumbs, and 50 grams of butter. We're going to start by preparing all the ingredients for the stew. First, we're going to cut our vegetables. So we have to cut our onions into slices. So I'm going to peel it. So after I cut my onions in half, I'm actually going to cut them in half in the opposite direction and now cut this into 1 centimeter thick slices. I've put all my pieces of cut onion in a bowl and I'm going to add the rest of the vegetables to that same bowl because everything is going to go in the pan at the same time. I'm going to cut the celery in slices the same thickness as the onion. I love the smell of celery. Going to peel my carrot. And I'll cut these carrots in discs, again, same thickness as the onions and the celery. And now we're going to move on to cutting the meat. So I'm going to cut my meat into, not quite cubes, but about a 3 centimeter, little over 1 inch thick piece of meat, and add it all to the same bowl. If you're using brisket, of course, you'll have to cut it into strips, but because I'm using boneless short ribs, it's already cut in strips by the butcher. If there's silver skin on it, like this, that you should remove. Don't cut off the fat though, because that adds flavor. But the silver skin, that's not going to render down, so you want to throw that away. I noticed that one of my strips of short rib was a little wider than the rest, so these I'm actually going to cut in half again to make them a little closer to a cube. Okay. Now that we've cut our meat in chunks, it's time to season it liberally with salt and pepper. I'm just using my tongs to move the meat around and make sure that it's being seasoned on all sides. Some salt. Doing the same thing. If I was really talented, I could probably just toss it in a bowl, but I'm not. So I'm just not taking the risk and using my tongs. Now I'm going to just put the flour in the bowl, toss everything around, and we'll shake off any excess flour before we brown it. I used a 1/4 cup of flour and it looks like that was more than enough. And now let's go to the stove. I have a large cast iron Dutch oven on the stove. I'm going to heat it up over medium-high heat, add my olive oil and my butter and wait for that to melt. Make sure that whatever pot you're using, it A, has a lid, and B, is safe to go into the oven. I like to swirl it around a little bit just to mix the butter and the olive oil. And as you can see, the butter is fully melted and bubbling, so I'm now going to add my beef. Shake off any excess flour, and if you see pieces that aren't covered in flour, cover them. You may have to do this in 2 batches if all the beef doesn't fit in one layer on the bottom of your pot. Okay, this is all the beef that fits in my pan, so I'll be doing it in 2 batches. I'm now going to let this sit undisturbed, and then in a little bit I will check it to see if it is browning, and if so, I'm going to turn the pieces. It's been a few minutes, so let's check. And yep, there's some nice browning happening, so now I'm going to turn the pieces. As each side starts to brown, I keep turning it so that all the sides get evenly browned. So I notice that here on the right hand side, the pan is not getting as hot. So I'm just moving some pieces around so they can brown evenly. This first batch is done, so I'm going to take it out of the pan so I can add the rest of the beef. I'm actually going to lower the heat while I'm doing this so that the butter and olive oil don't splash too much. So now I'm going to turn the heat back up to medium-high and add the rest of the beef. Again, shake off any excess flour. And just like for the first batch, start turning them when you can see that they are browned on one side. The last batch of beef has browned nicely, so I'm going to remove it from the pan and add it in with the other beef in this dish. And now I'm going to add the onions, celery, and carrots. And use your spoon to scrape off the bits on the bottom of the pan, also called the fond. That is what imparts tons of flavor to these vegetables. So. We're going to keep cooking this until the onions are starting to turn a light brown. You don't have to stir constantly, just stir it from time to time, make sure nothing gets stuck to the bottom. I've turned my oven on at 150 degrees Celsius, 300 degrees Fahrenheit, because once everything is in the pot, it's going to go in the oven and cook for 2 to 3 hours. The onions are starting to take on a little bit of a light brown color, so just a few more minutes and then we're ready to continue. My vegetables are at the color I want, so now I'm going to add the beef back in, including any juice that came out. Stir it around, mix them all up. Now I'm going to add my beef stock, vinegar, mustard. I'm going to stir that one more time. I wish that we had smell-o-vision, because it smells so good in the kitchen right now. I have put my bay leaves, ginger, and cloves in a little cheesecloth baggie, and I'm going to put it in here because that's going to make it so much easier to remove later. I'm going to turn off the flame, put on the lid, and put the pan in the oven. We're going to cook this for 2 to 3 hours until the beef is fall apart tender. If you're enjoying this video, please click the like and subscribe button. It will really help our channel. If you want YouTube to notify you whenever we post a new video, click the bell. I've peeled and cut my potatoes into medium-sized chunks. I'm now going to fill my pan with cold water until it covers all the potatoes. Just like that. A generous pinch of salt. And now we're going to go to the stove. Over medium-high heat, we're going to bring this to a boil. As you can see, the water has come to a boil. I'm going to lower the heat to medium-low, put a lid on it, and now I'm going to let them cook until they're fork tender. The potatoes have been cooking for a little over 20 minutes, so let's test them. And yep, fork goes in and out very easily. So I'm going to turn off the flame, and now what I'm going to do is drain the water into a measuring cup because I may have to use it later when I'm mashing the potatoes if they're a little bit too dry. Okay, I've drained the potatoes. Now I'm going to add the butter, a little bit of nutmeg, some salt, some pepper. You can use white pepper if you want. My wife and I like the flavor of black pepper better, but if you don't like to see the black specks, by all means, use white pepper. And now I'm going to start mashing them. Just going to stir it around, make sure that the butter is melted. I think it is a little dry, so I'm going to add just a little bit of water and stir that through. The potatoes are already mashed enough, I don't have to keep mashing them. So I'm going to give it a taste to see if I need to adjust the seasoning at all. Enough salt, but I think it can use just a little bit more pepper. I'm going to stir that through. Okay, I'm going to let this cool off while the beef is finishing in the oven. The beef has been cooking for about 2 hours, so I'm going to check it. I normally would do this by just peeking it in the oven, but I want you to be able to see what I'm looking at. So I took it out. There's still a good amount of liquid and the beef is not yet fall apart tender. So I'm going to put it back in the oven without the lid on for another half an hour and then we'll check again. We left the stew in the oven for 30 minutes and then checked it, and it was still too much liquid to my liking. So we left it in for another 15 to 20 minutes and now it has the consistency I like. So let me give it a taste to see if it needs any extra seasoning. Watch out, it's hot. It tastes good, but can use a little bit more salt and a little bit more pepper. So I'm just going to add a pinch of salt and a few cracks of black pepper. Let me get my pollepel and stir it through. Okay, let's give it another taste. Much better. I'm going to put this just to the side while I prepare the dishes for making the casserole. I want to make 2 jachtschotels, so I'm using 2 square baking dishes that are about 23 centimeters by 23 centimeters or 9 by 9 inch. You can also use one large one, of course. So I'm going to spray these with a little bit of cooking spray. And then I'm going to rub that around so that all the sides and the bottom have a little bit of the spray on it. You can use some butter as well if you rather. Okay. And I have one more ingredient to prep. I've peeled 2 of my 3 apples. They're a little bigger and I'm not sure if I would need all 3, and I'm going to cut them into slices, like about 1.5 centimeters thick. Now I thought I had an apple core, but I don't. So what I'm going to do is I am slicing them first and using a very small cookie cutter to core the slices. Okay, and now we have to move a little fast because I don't want the apples to get brown. I'm going to assemble the jachtschottel now. First thing I'm going to do is remove the cheesecloth with all the aromatics. And now I'm going to put a layer of the stew in each of the casserole dishes. Just make sure that both dishes have approximately the same amount of meat. Okay. Now we're going to put a layer of apples on top of it. Just going to put 3. I miscounted. I'm going to put 4 in one and 3 in the other. I'm going to move this out of the way and get my mashed potatoes. I'm now going to add a layer of potatoes on each. You want to make sure that you cover the entire top. Just make sure you cover the apples and go all the way to the edge. And now I'm going to get my breadcrumbs and sprinkle it on top of this. Okay, last thing I have to do is get that last little bit of butter and put it on top. I cut my butter into little cubes and I'm going to put this on top of the breadcrumbs. My oven isn't quite done preheating to 200 degrees Celsius or 400 degrees Fahrenheit, so I have to wait for that. The oven is at temperature, so I'm going to put both of these in for 20 minutes or until the top turns into a nice crust. Make sure there's enough space between them so that it browns evenly on all the sides. As you can see, the potato layer has gotten lightly golden brown. I don't know if you can hear this. It's got some crust. Can't wait to try this. So let me move them out of the way. Scoop up. I have some stew, I have some apple, I have some crust. Smells like there's applesauce in there. It's too hot. Okay, that was too hot to taste right now, so I'm just gonna let it cool off a little. It's smakelijk. What a great combination of textures and flavors. You got a little bit of the crunch from the breadcrumbs on the potatoes. There's that tartness with sweet from the apple. The meat literally just melts in your mouth. You can tell that that broth was really rich and the meat is so beefy. It is delicious. Let me see if I can find a carrot because the celery has completely melted. You can't even tell it's in there. So let's try a bite with some carrot. The carrot is soft but not mushy. It is great. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like and subscribe button and don't forget to share it with your friends. If you have any questions or memories from eating jagschotel, leave them in the comments below. I will post the written recipe on my website, twanskitchen.com, and you can follow me on social media as well. If you make this dish, I would love it if you take a photo and post it on Instagram with the hashtag TwansKitchen. I will feature it in my stories and on my website. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.